Hello, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the zoning administrator for the city of San Clemente. My name is Cecilia Gallardo Daly. I am the zoning administrator. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the zoning administrator meeting of May 6, 2021 to receive and file. So received and filed. The next item on the agenda is oral and written communication. This is the time on the agenda for any member of the public to address the zoning administrator on any item within the jurisdiction of the zoning administrator that is not on the agenda. For non-agenda public comments, we request that any comments be submitted to the zoning administrator by noon on meeting days. And those comments can be submitted electronically and emailed to www.san-clemente.org/ZA public comment. The zoning administrator is not permitted to discuss or take action on items that don't appear on the agenda. I don't have any requests to speak during oral and written communication, so I'll move on to the next section on the agenda, which is public hearings. We have 3 public hearings today, and the public hearing process will include a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicants not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker. Following closure of the public hearing, the zoning administrator will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. So before we get into the public hearing items on the agenda, I do want to note that one of the items listed, it's item B, A4B, 240 Avenida Vista, Montana. It's a minor architectural permit for Seacrest Apartments storage units. There is a request to continue that item to the next zoning administrator meeting of June 17, 2021. So I'm going to go ahead and continue that item on the agenda. And then we'll move on with the rest of the public hearing items. So our first item is a minor exception permit and minor cultural heritage permit for 218 Avenida Miramar. And we'll have our staff planner, Katie Crockett, give us a report on this item.
Good afternoon. Yes, as you mentioned, this is, can you see the presentation, Cecilia?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is a minor cultural heritage permit and minor exception permit for an addition and remodel of a legal non-conforming single-family residence, which abuts historic properties. And the minor exception permit is to maintain the existing non-conforming setback for the new addition areas. The project is located at 218 Avenida Miramar in the medium density residential zone and the coastal zone overlay, just northwest of the downtown T-zone. Most properties on the street are a mix of single and multifamily residential structures, which are 1 and 2 stories. As you can see there in red, the abutting historic properties are actually across the street. Those historic properties, the 2-story residence on the left here has previously been recommended actually for approval from the city's list of historic structures. And then there's the 1-story residence on the right, which is a good representation of the character of many of San Clemente's historic residences. The subject property across the street from those 2 historic residences was permitted in 1951. It is an 880 square foot 1-story residence with a detached 1-car garage at the rear of the property. The existing structure is non-conforming with regard to the front setback, which is 14 feet 6 inches, where 15 feet is required. And at the side setback on the left side of the property, which is 4 feet where 5 feet is required. The property is also non-conforming with regard to the number of covered parking spaces, with just 1 in the garage as opposed to 2. The application requests, they're in blue, the small 36 square foot addition at the front of the property, maintaining the non-conforming front setback, and a 385 square foot addition at the rear of the residence, maintaining the non-conforming side setback, shown in green. The overall addition area is less than 50% of the existing square footage and represents the first floor area additions to the property since it was constructed in the 50s. The zoning ordinance allows applicants to request a minor exception permit for a 15% encroachment into the front setback and continuations of legal non-conforming side setbacks up to 30 inches from the side property line. The project as proposed maintains the side setback at 48 inches from the side property line and encroaches just 3% into the front setback. So both of these requested encroachments, which continue the existing nonconformities, are well below the maximum encroachments, which could be permitted through a minor exception permit. The small addition to the front of the property, while it is visible from the right-of-way in front of the historic structures, does not significantly change the scale or the massing of the structure and would not negatively impact the historic structures. The applicant plans to add new windows and doors, as well as wood shingle siding on portions of the house, as you can see on the front here. The larger, there we go. The larger addition area at the rear of the property would not be visible from the right-of-way. The additions and modifications do meet all development standards for the RM zone, except the aforementioned continuations of the existing non-conforming setbacks. And there is no prescribed architectural style for this property. Staff did receive a couple of public comments that I will read into the record once the public hearing is opened. However, staff did have discussions with those people, and I can comment on that maybe when we move to that part of the meeting. So staff's recommendation is that the project be deemed categorically exempt from CEQA and that the zoning administrator adopt the resolution approving the project. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and the applicant, Jim Ettinger, is also available.
Okay, thank you for that staff report, Katie. And just one question for clarification. There are no changes proposed to the existing single-car garage, correct?
No changes to the garage.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to speak or make any comments regarding the project? No? Okay. All right. So I'm gonna move on to the public hearing portion. I will open the public hearing, and Katie, do you want to go ahead and read those comments from the public on this item?
Yes, they are both from the same commenter. The first one says, my name is Annie Maraki, and I'm the manager of 219 Avenida Palizada LLC. That is the owner of the property located at 219 West Avenida Palizada. The property with proposed additions at 218 Avenida Miramar is adjacent to said property in the back. I do have several concerns and would like to make sure that those will not be issues during this proposed project. My intentions are also ensure that our property is not damaged and my tenants are not disturbed in any way during this project. We have had very bad experiences in the past when a neighbor's construction next door to 218 Avenida Miramar caused my previous tenants so much invasion of privacy that they moved out because of it. Here are the concerns. I'd like to make sure that this addition is not going to involve any construction that will create structural problems to my property at 219 West Avenida Palizada. Any damage or debris caused by this project will be fixed and cleaned immediately by 218 Miramar owners and construction crew. I'd like to make sure that the proposed changes to the rear setback will not include fills and raising the backyard beyond where it naturally is currently in any way, as this will cause our back unit to feel very dark. I'd like to make sure that the proposed changes will not create privacy issues to our back unit. I'd like to make sure that our property and the tenants will not be disturbed in any way during this project. And I assume that there was or will be a proper land survey for this project, and property markers were placed. I'd like to have that information. Please email it to me. And then her next comment is the proposed 6-foot block wall in the back will impact our back unit at 219 West Avenida Palizada extremely negatively. It would make our unit sunken in the ground. I'd prefer the current wood fence instead of a harsh structure like the proposed back wall. So those are the 2 public comments that we received. And if you'd like me to comment on any of the discussion I had with the commenter, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and close the public hearing since that concludes public comment on this item. And yes, Katie, if you would go ahead and talk us through some of those conversations with the person that sent in those comments, that would be great.
Yes, so I sent her a larger copy of the plans so she could more easily see them, including the topographic survey that was provided as the last page of the plans. And ultimately, she said that primarily her greatest concern was the block wall that's proposed in the back. And I just communicated to her that that's not really what we're granting an exception or a cultural heritage permit for, and that it's something that we can let the applicant know that they would prefer to have the fence. And if it is a shared property line wall, that the applicant should be consulting the other property owner, but that wouldn't affect our review of this application. Additionally, the concern related to the fact the part about it being dark in the back, I think she was thinking that it was a retaining wall. That's what she expressed to me, and that the project would be, the property would be filled because it does slope down just a bit in the back. But if you look on your plans, there's some cross sections, and it does show that little deck that they're planning to construct because they are not doing any fill to make the rear of the property higher. So that concern, I think, is addressed with what's shown on the plans.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, I don't have any follow-up questions for you or the applicant on this. You know, the small addition at the front of the residence necessitated the application for the minor cultural heritage permit because it couldn't be screened from the historic structures across the street on Avenida Miramar. And most of the work being done to the property is at the rear of the residence, away from the historic structures. So I've reviewed the report and looked through the plans, and I can make the findings for the permits. So with respect to the minor exception permit, the requested minor exception will not interfere with the purpose of the zone or the standards of the zone in which the property is located. The proposal does not affect the use of the property as a single family residence in the RM zone. The setback encroachments for the addition are consistent with the existing condition of the lot and don't affect any other property's ability to be developed or used as single or multifamily residences. In addition, the zoning ordinance does provide for these types of minor encroachments for primary structures. The neighboring properties will not be adversely affected as the result of the approval or conditional approval of the minor exception permit. The proposed encroachments don't substantially modify the existing conditions on the subject property. The addition to the front of the property additionally maintains the general scale and massing of the residence. The approval or conditional approval of the minor exception permit will not be detrimental to health, safety, or welfare of the general public. The building permits and OCFA reviews are required for the new construction, ensuring that the new addition will meet all building and safety codes. With respect to the minor cultural heritage permit, the architectural treatment of the project complies with the San Clemente General Plan and local coastal land use plan. The proposed changes will update the facade, enhancing the character of the existing residential neighborhood. The proposed project maintains the existing one-story scale of the existing residence and doesn't change the massing of the structure. Most of the addition is at the rear. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the zoning ordinance in areas including but not limited to height and setback. The project as proposed complies with all development standards, including height, lot coverage, except for the minor exceptions requested for the front and side setback encroachments. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the architectural guidelines in the city's design guidelines. On this particular section of Avenida Miramar, there are a mix of 1- and 2-story residences, and the scale and massing of the proposed project maintain that scale and massing consistent with the general development pattern on the street. The general appearance of the proposal is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. The proposed stucco, the wood shingle siding, and the composition shingle roof will be consistent with the character of other structures in the neighborhood. The proposal is not detrimental to the orderly and harmonious development of the city. And the proposed project will not have a negative visual or physical impact upon the historic structure. The project does not affect the height of the existing structure, nor does it significantly impact the massing or scale, particularly as viewed from the historic structure across the street. And the general updates to the structure will be compatible with the existing buildings in the neighborhood and will therefore not negatively impact the historic structure across the street. So with that, I'll determine that the project is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to guidelines section 15301, class 1 existing facilities, and 15305, class 5 minor alterations in land use limitations, and I hereby approve resolution ZA 21-014, approving minor exception permit 21-004 and minor architectural permit 21-066, the Piana residence, subject to the conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, well, that was the Seacrest apartment storage units, but I am continuing that item to the next regular scheduled meeting of the zoning administrator of June 17, 2021. So moving on to the next item, this is a minor cultural heritage permit for the Cameron Edition at 129 Avenida de la Brula, and we'll have our staff planner, Stephanie Rojas, give us a report on this item. Thank you, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, zoning administrator. The project site is a 4,500 square foot lot in the residential medium density zone. It contains a non-conforming single-story, single-family residential home. The house is considered non-conforming because it has a one-car garage, and that garage does not meet the minimum front yard setback requirement. The property is adjacent to a historic home at the rear located at 146 Avenida Pelayo. And for that reason, this application requires a minor cultural heritage permit. The applicant, Ball Architecture, proposes to construct a second-story room addition. The addition is just under 500 square feet, and it would bring the total residence to just under 2,000 square feet. Staff supports the proposed addition for the following reasons. First, the project was reviewed by the Design Review Subcommittee earlier this year. The purpose of that review was to evaluate potential impacts to the abutting historic home and to assess the architectural compatibility of expanding the non-conforming garage. The subcommittee supported the project with specific design changes. The applicant revised the project to fully address all DRC recommendations. Overall, the subcommittee found that the project represents a high-quality architectural design that is compatible with the character of the neighborhood and consistent with the city's design guidelines. Second, the project does not impact the adjacent historic resource. The addition is oriented towards the front of the property furthest away from the historic building. And because the historic resource is located on a different street, the addition will not affect public views or sightlines of the historic home. And third, the project would expand the garage and driveway to allow for 2 covered parking spaces and 2 uncovered driveway spaces. This would improve the property's functionality and it alleviates the demand for street parking. The driveway is more than 18 feet in length due to the right-of-way line beginning several feet behind the sidewalk. Cars parked on the driveway would not encroach over the public sidewalk. Additional staff analysis is provided in your staff reports, but for the reasons described in this presentation, staff recommends the zoning administrator approve the project with the conditions of approval outlined in your resolution. The applicant Stephen Ball and Charles O. Yang of Ball Architecture are present and available for this meeting, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Let's see. Why don't we have the applicant team go ahead and make any comments if they'd like to regarding the project?
I have nothing to add to that presentation. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see here. I just have one clarifying question. One of the comments from the design review subcommittee had to do with the shape of the roof deck to be more rectangular in design. And that's what it looks like on the plans. It looks like it's more of a rectangular shape. I did notice that there was on sheet A2.02 a reference to new round roof deck, but that label is just referring to maybe what had been previously round, but now it's changed to the square deck.
That is correct. The original roof observation deck was round. A board member had some issues with it. It was not that vital to maintain it round, so we changed it to rectangular.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, we don't have anything else to follow up on regarding the information in the report or the exhibit. So at this time, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. I have not received any comments on this item. Stephanie, have you received any public comments?
Staff has not received any public comments on this item.
No. Okay. All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I've reviewed all of the information in the report, reviewed the plans, the conditions, the findings, and thank you for the very detailed staff report, Stephanie, and to the applicant team. Your exhibits were very clear and easy to follow and really told the story. So thank you for making it easier for me to understand the changes. And I think that this project will be a very nice addition to the neighborhood. So with that, I can make the findings for the permits. For the minor cultural heritage permit, the architectural treatment of the project complies with the San Clemente general plan. The project's size, scale, architecture, setback, and materials are consistent with the general plan residential land use goals. The project enhances the property's curb appeal by adding a second floor wraparound balcony, adding a new front porch and deck, and other improvements to the front yard, landscape, and hardscape. The proposed second story addition is thoughtfully integrated into the design of the existing home. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the zoning code. The project complies with all applicable requirements of the zone, with the exception of the existing non-conforming front yard setback. The proposed second-story addition complies with the height limits of the zone, and the project also eliminates the property's non-conforming parking condition by expanding the garage to comply with the city's parking space requirement for single-family residences. And as required by the ordinance, the project was reviewed by the Design Review Subcommittee, and the subcommittee found that the project represents a high-quality architectural design, is compatible with the neighborhood and consistent with the city's design guidelines. And the applicant has incorporated the Design Review Subcommittee's recommendations into the final project design. The the general appearance of the proposal is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. The proposed improvements are consistent with the mass and scale of other properties in the neighborhood and the general character of the street. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the architectural guidelines of the city's design guidelines. As I mentioned, the second floor addition blends well into the existing architecture of the home. The proposal is not detrimental to the orderly and harmonious development of the city. The proposed garage and driveway expansions improve the property's functionality and alleviate the demand for street parking. And the existing property exceeds the 50% minimum front yard landscape requirement. And the proposed front yard landscape and hardscape improvements will further enhance the property's appearance. For projects reviewed because they are abutting or within 300 feet of a historic property, the proposed project will not have negative visual or physical impacts upon the historic structure. The project does not impact the adjacent historic resource at 146 Avenida Palayo. The addition is oriented towards the front of the property, furthest away from the historic building, and the proposed addition respects the privacy, sun, and light exposure of the historic resource and is set back over 73 feet. The historic resource is located on a different street. Therefore, the proposed addition will not affect public views or sight lines of the historic resource. So with that, I'll determine that the project is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to guidelines section 15301, class 1, existing facilities. And I approve resolution ZA 21-016, the minor cultural heritage permit 20-380 Cameron addition, subject to the conditions of approval. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. This is a revision, public house parking revisions, 1531 North El Camino Real, and we'll have our planner Stephanie Rojas give us a report on the project.
Thank you. This item is related to the public house project, which was originally approved by the Planning Commission on January 20th, earlier this year. The original entitlement included a conditional use permit allowing the establishment of a multi-use facility comprised of a special events venue with valet parking services, a daytime cafe, and accessory church services. The entitlement also included a minor cultural heritage permit for exterior building and site modifications to a historic property. The applicant is now requesting an amendment to the approved site plan, which would allow a secondary alley driveway as required by the California Coastal Commission. The applicant also requests a minor exception permit for 2 parking waivers. The revised site plan was reviewed by the city's engineering division to ensure all engineering standards were met. Overall, staff supports the project for several reasons, which I'll go over in my presentation. First, this request is a de-intensification of the approved project. This amendment would eliminate the most substantial site plan change proposed in the original application. During the earlier review, staff in the design review subcommittee indicated a preference to retain both driveways. This amendment would reduce the approved scope of work, and it would retain both driveways consistent with existing site conditions. Staff believes this change would improve overall traffic circulation and minimize vehicle backup onto El Camino Real. Second, the proposed parking reduction is a result of regulatory requirements. Specifically, the city required the applicant to restripe the parking lot to comply with current engineering standards and to construct a new trash enclosure. And now the Coastal Commission, as I mentioned, is requiring the applicant to retain the alley driveway. These city and Coastal Commission requirements have resulted in the net loss of 6 parking stalls. However, staff believes that internal circulation is improved by ensuring driveway and parking stalls are sufficiently wide to allow for safe maneuvering. With regard to the minor exception permit, there is sufficient public parking available in close proximity to the project site. The applicant conducted an informal parking survey of the surrounding streets to assess available on-street parking. Nearby, there is street parking for approximately 6 vehicles on El Camino Real and 56 vehicles on Calle de los Molinos. The survey found that on weekday evenings and weekends during Public House's peak demand hours, over 50% of the street parking on Calle de los Molinos was available. The survey also found that no cars were observed on El Camino Real in front of the Public House building during the survey count hours. Fourth, public parking is also available in the nearby Metrolink commuter parking lot. The most recent North Beach parking study that was conducted by the city found that parking supply was less than half occupied during its peak hours. The most highly used parking areas were near the Ole Hansen Beach Club, away from the project site. The city's parking study demonstrates that sufficient parking exists in the North Beach study area to support the applicant's request for 2 parking waivers. And staff's fifth and final reason for supporting the request is because the project substantially complies with the city's general plan, the local coastal program land use plan, as well as the design guidelines. The LUP includes policies encouraging parking lots to be designed with adequate dimensions and alley access. The LUP also supports the use of alternative parking strategies such as valet service, which provides for multimodal parking and improves land use efficiency. The project also advances various city goals related to economic development, improving pedestrian activity in a visitor-serving area, and using high-quality architecture consistent with the city's Spanish Village by the Sea character. Additional staff analysis is provided in the staff report. It's also worth noting that the original entitlement includes several conditions of approval to manage parking and traffic circulation. For example, there is a condition in the Planning Commission resolution requiring the applicant to work with staff to develop a parking and traffic management plan should issues arise in the future. All previous conditions of approval still apply to this project. However, staff recommends supplementing it with additional conditions. The supplemental conditions requires the applicant to update the valet operations plan and to ensure that truck deliveries do not impact on-site parking. For the reasons outlined in the staff report, staff recommends the zoning administrator approve the project with conditions. And joining us on today's Zoom meeting, we have Jim Holloway representing the property owner and one of the public house operators, Eric Bowman. The other half of the applicant team really wanted to be here, but they are currently celebrating at the San Clemente High School graduation ceremony. So Jim and Eric are more than happy to answer any questions on behalf of their applicant team. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, at this time, I'll go ahead and let the applicant team make any comments on the item. Thank you.
Hello.
Do Eric or Jim wish to speak?
Well, this is Eric. Hello. I bet you Jim's probably trying to work the mute button there. I'm thinking, but
I got it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I always push it the wrong way. I think I'm muting and I'm unmuting, etc. But thanks for bearing with me. Eric, you want to take it away, or do you want to finish up your comments?
No, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Just real quickly, I have about 2 minutes, 4 comments. They're all related. I did want to emphasize, Stephanie mentioned general plan policy regarding, my 4 comments are, number 1, included in the staff report is general plan policy regarding the importance of economic development and the revitalization of North Beach. And I think that that bears emphasizing, especially for this project. The second point is that staff opines that this project does advance those economic and revitalization policies of the general plan. My third comment is that I hope that the city council and city manager understand that sufficient development review staff resources are necessary in order to provide quality development review and efficient customer service that are necessary in order to advance general plan policies regarding economic development and revitalization, which I know that the council talks about that a lot, but I'm not sure if they've made the connection between economic development and processing projects through the city. So I hope that they understand that, and this is a good example of why that's necessary. My fourth and final comment, all the other things I've said being said, I want to thank Stephanie Rojas. She did a great job on this project. It was complex for a small scale project, and also Zach Ponson from the engineering department. So with that, I thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. All right, and Eric, did you want to add anything?
I know there's a certain time limit, but no, I just wanted to say we're just excited about the project, and as it relates to the parking structure, I think it's a good collaboration between just the city and team, just to come up with a solution that I think is just right for the project, and I think it's just going to serve the that much better and that much easier and that much safer. I just think it's a good plan. I just hope you'll consider that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see. Before I open up the public hearing, I do have a question for staff related to the impact of the loss of the 6 parking spaces. I mean, the applicant did provide a parking survey that I identified the availability of on-street parking, and we know of the nearby Metrolink commuter lot. Is there a concern on the part of staff about the impacts to the project of the loss of the 6 parking stalls and impacts to circulation in the area?
Thanks for the question. So I would say that staff is not concerned about that. With regard to parking and traffic circulation, that topic was reviewed and time and again very thoroughly during the original entitlement review. It was something that, although it was outside of the purview of design review subcommittee, did become a subject of discussion during that design review meeting as well. As I mentioned in the staff report and as well as my presentation, there was concerns about traffic circulation at that point because of the proposed elimination of the secondary driveway. So it's something that has been reviewed time and again. I think that staff and the applicant do believe that the proposal and the revised site plan that we have today really represents the best balance in terms of being able to provide sufficient parking on site to accommodate the multiple uses proposed at Public House, but at the same time, address concerns with regard to vehicle stacking and circulation in the vicinity, and that based on the existing conditions and what we've seen happening out there, there is sufficient parking and capacity on the surrounding streets to be able to offset any additional parking demand that is to be expected. So the short answer to your question is staff is not concerned about the net loss of 6 parking spaces. That being said, the minor exception permit is really only requesting 2 parking waivers.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. I appreciate that input. The proposed amendment does provide an opportunity to resolve some of the concerns raised during the original entitlement review of the project. The proposed changes retain both driveways, so now there's 2 ways to access the site. I think that the site plan changes proposed are an improvement, and the parking waiver trade-off will help to ensure that this better circulation and site design is maintained, and most importantly, that the historic resource is preserved. I noted that staff did add conditions regarding parking management to ensure that the reduction in the number of parking spaces won't have an impact on the business operations. So with that, I can make the findings for the minor cultural heritage permit.
Cecilia? I'm not sure if you opened the public hearing or not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Yes, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I have not received any public comments on this item. Has staff received any public comments to read into the record?
No, staff has not received any public comments on this item either.
Okay. All right. So with that, I will close the public hearing, and I'm going to go through some findings here for the project. With respect to the minor cultural heritage permit findings, the architectural treatment of the project complies with the San Clemente general plan. This amendment is actually limited to parking lot layout and doesn't impact the building architecture or more importantly, the courtyard wall that was the subject of much discussion. The proposed project is consistent with the coastal land use plan. It brings the project into compliance with the policy in the coastal plan that talks about maintaining alley access to commercial businesses. The architectural treatment of the project complies with applicable specific plan requirements in areas including but not limited to height, setback, and color. Again, this amendment does not impact the structure. It's limited to changes to the parking lot layout. The proposed amendment does provide an opportunity to resolve concerns previously raised during the original entitlement review related to traffic circulation and vehicle stacking. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the architectural guidelines in the city's design guidelines. Again, the proposed project does not impact building architecture or the approved courtyard wall. The general appearance of the proposal is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. The amendment is limited to changes to the approved parking lot layout. The proposed changes will allow the site to retain its existing ingress and egress access points off El Camino Real and the Los Obreros Lane Alley. The proposal is not detrimental to the orderly and harmonious development of the city. The proposed modifications, alterations, or additions are sufficiently in conformance with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties and the San Clemente design guidelines to substantially further the city's goals of historic preservation. The project itself is not making any changes to the historic building. Previous proposals to renovate the public house have brought that into conformance with current regulations such as building code, ADA, and parking lot standards. For resources on the city's landmark list, the proposed rehabilitation, restoration, preservation, or reconstruction including modifications, alterations, or additions, are found to be in conformance with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties and preserve to the extent feasible the character defining features. The parking lot layout and site plan amendment does not involve changes to the historic building. The amendment is limited to changes to the parking lot and site access. With respect to the minor exception permit, the requested minor exception will not interfere with the purpose of the zone or the standards of the zone in which the property is located. Neighboring properties will not be adversely affected as a result of the approval or conditional approval of the minor exception permit. The approval or conditional approval of the minor exception permit will not be detrimental to health, safety, or welfare of the general public. The structure is listed on the city's designated historic structures list. The site is on the city's local register of historic properties. But these changes proposed as a result of this application don't impact any character defining features of the historic resource. Public parking is available in close proximity to the structure. Public parking is available on the streets and in the nearby Metrolink commuter parking area. The parking required by the zone and or district within which the property is located cannot be provided without altering or modifying the historic structure in a manner which is incompatible with the historic structure's original architectural style and character. Providing all required parking on the premises would result in the reduction of site landscaping. Landscaping was a critical piece of the original design review of the entitlements, and significant consideration was given to the approved landscape plan to increase visibility of the west building elevation from street views. Landscaping was also strategically added around and within the site to soften views of the courtyard walls and enhance the site's overall aesthetic character. Removing site landscaping in favor of parking would be detrimental to the project's design intent. And the modifications of the parking requirements will not be detrimental to health, safety, and general welfare of either the people residing in the area or in the general public. As mentioned, parking counts were conducted to show that there is available parking on the streets surrounding the subject site. So with that, I'll determine that the project is categorically exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15301. And I approve resolution ZA 21-017, master permit 21-030, public house parking revision subject to the conditions of approval. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, thanks, Eric and Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the next item on the agenda, new business. Seeing none, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, old business. Seeing none, I will adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting of the zoning administrator to be held on Thursday, June 17, 2021 at 3 p.m. via teleconference. Thank you.